I was looking for cards that Goblins would usually use here, and this is a great card against Show and Tell. It just didn't even clear my mind that he was able to use it. Obviously, this is exactly what it's for, but I was on definite tunnel vision there with my plan.
Okay, we have Marshall McClarnon on the left playing Omnitel, and Max Tietze on the right playing Goblins. Max having a lot of recent success at the Open level and at the Grand Prix level.
If you're just joining us, I'm Adrian Sullivan here with Ben Seck. This is Star City Games. We're in the final major tournament of the weekend, the Legacy Open here in Atlanta, Georgia.
This is round 8 of 9. 2 more rounds left.
Now remember, one of the things that we also have besides this video coverage is our text coverage being produced by many people here at the event. You can see some incredible photos of the many players that have been doing well throughout this weekend. You can see things like Lauren Lee's metagame breakdowns for what's been going on. There are some deck techs. There are numerous different small features that are covering matches that we don't get on camera, so be sure to check that out as well at starcitygames.com. And that swirl there is awesome on that sleeve. Sorry to...
So Marshall has mulliganed. He looks like he's kind of shaking his head. Doesn't look like a great keep there. He's going to go down to 5.
This is certainly a deck that can go mulligan really hard. And it's also worth thinking about. The Max Tietze is a player that if you pay attention to the Star City Games circuit, you know he's somebody to be reckoned with. So if Marshall, sitting at the top tables, looked around, he might pay attention and be like, oh, there's Max, and just already remember what Max is playing. Now, Marshall has a previous Star City Games Legacy Open Top 8 with Merfolk that he acquired in Nashville. Marshall appears to be he could be a Tennessee player. He's got several finishes in various different events in Tennessee.
Okay. Marshall really only needs one card. He needs Show and Tell, and he has a few ways to get it. Obviously, he has 3 Show and Tells in the main. He has 1 in the sideboard, which he can Burning Wish for. He has a Personal Tutor to also go for it. Personal Tutor is actually from Portal. Basically, is a mystical tutor.
Now remember, earlier this year, Max Tietze was our invitational champion, the first invitational of the year. So Max Tietze getting the big check only a scant 6 months ago.
Okay, Marshall is still thinking about his hand. He's going to keep it. Looks like Max is on the play. Plays one of those Arena Mountains and a Ether Vial. Marshall cracking a Misty Rainforest. Grabbing an island.
Now, talk about bad beats. In the Invitational, Max got 113th place. The top 110 players made day 2 of the Invitational, so he just barely missed the cut.
Okay, goes for Ponder.
That Ice Age Mountain is I love that color for the Ice Age Mountain.
Oh, I think it's a Arena one.
I'm pretty sure that's an Ice Age one. My favorite mountain is also an Ice Age mountain. Just the fake snow-covered mountain from the Ice Age.
Maybe you're right, yeah.
It could well be from Arena. You see the Aether Vial of Max is going up to 1, and a Rishadan Port that Max uses immediately on Marshall's upkeep to hold down that island. We see a fetch from Marshall.
Yep. One of the hallmarks of the Goblin deck is its ability to actually suppress the mana of its opponents. It has 4 Wastelands and 4 Ports, and really relies on the Vial to do a lot of the work for the mana.
whether it's a vial or a lackey, essentially tying up your mana with port and losing your mana with wasteland is not such a big deal when you have these alternate ways to get your spells out there.
So it casts a second ponder. Let's have a look here. We can't quite get the visual on the hand. Looks like it's a possible keeper.
If you're at home, don't try craning your neck. It's not going to work. This is a two-dimensional broadcast.
Marshall is not liking those three. Shuffles them up.
Now, Marshall's deck does have Lotus Petals, so he can get a surprise burst of mana to get towards his combo.
And Ancient Tomb and City of Trader, so really he's only one land drop away from being able to cast Show and Tell.
And the Ponder Shuffle allows Marshall to draw a card.
And he passes.
And that's a pass, yeah. End of the turn, nothing. Beginning of the upkeep, the Aether Vial goes up to 2. And does Max have a Wasteland? He would sure like one.
Yeah.
I don't think he has it.
Getting the Volcanic Island against the Goblin deck seems to indicate that he probably has a Burning Wish in his hand, because he does have another island in his deck, and it often will be very, very important to only show basics versus Goblins, because Wasteland is really brutal if you don't have if you let it happen.
Of course, one of the problems that Max has here, he has no pressure to punish Marshall McClarnon. Oh, look at this. He goes for pressure. Matron tutoring up. What?
That's a Portal Goblin Matron.
And he gets a Goblin Pile Driver.
Okay.
And this is going to open up Marshall McClarnon to being able to act.
Yep.
But in return, Max Tietze is going to be able to present at least 4 power of attackers the coming turn, if not more.
Okay.
Will Marshall do something powerful here? He's got an opportunity.
Oh,
boy.
So it's Burning Wish. Burning Wish.
Yeah, Burning Wish.
Probably for Show and Tell is my guess. Now, unless he's got a Lotus Petal and a 2-mana land, that he will not be able to cast it this turn. Let's have a look. There's a petal.
Oh boy.
Oh.
Ancient Tomb.
Ancient Tomb. Okay, so Max basically looks at his hand to see what he's going to put into play.
2 damage from the Ancient Tomb.
Bring him to 16. Lotus Petal. Show and Tell.
That looks good, says Max. I'll put this one.
Card.
I'll put this one.
Emrakul.
Okay. Now, the game is not over yet. I believe what we're going to see here is a War Chief. Oh, a Sting Scourger. That works.
Yeah,
I didn't realize he had that. I thought he was going to go to try to put a ton of creatures into play and set up a potential somewhat race, but no, he's going to go for the bounce.
Yeah, so Emrakul has protection from colored spells. The triggered ability from Sting Scourger is not a spell, so therefore can actually target.
End of the turn, I think we're going to see a Goblin Pile Driver put into play by Max Tietze.
Or maybe even a Sting Scourger.
No, he's going to hold on to that one until his own turn. Pile Driver for the damage. There's the Pile Driver. And he gets to untap. His choice between upping that to 3 and then casting his Sting Scourger manually, or using the Cavern of Souls. He's going to go with the using the Aether Vial, and then he's got the trigger on the Aether Vial, which can still go up to 3 if he wants. He does let that happen, and goes on with his draw step. And now, is that another Rishadan port?
Yeah.
Oh boy, this could be all over for Marshall McClarnon. An attack here is going to be for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then he will be able to tap down 2 land, which means that unless Marshall McClarnon has another Show and Tell and a bunch of mana, 2 more mana on the table, that the game is over. What makes Goblins so powerful? It's a combination of the mana power advantage via suppressing the opponent and having cheat seas with your mana, combined with essentially a bunch of banned cards on the backs of goblin bodies. Demonic Tutor's not legal, but if you make it a Goblin Matron, sure is. I shouldn't say a bunch of banned cards, just a bunch of really powerful effects. Factor Fiction on a goblin body.
Yeah.
You know, Unsummon on a goblin, a Goblin Tutor. Here they come. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 damage.
Do you remember when this card had Goblin Recruiter? That was...
I do remember Goblin Recruiter. Goblin Recruiter well deserved its ban. We're gonna see some tapping. Start with either the Volcanic or the Ancient Tomb. Follow up with the other one. Draw.
Unless he has another Ancient Tomb up, and that's it.
That is it.
He only really had one shot. I mean, when you double mulligan, you really only have the resources to go once. The fact that he actually got to go once was actually pretty good, but he just didn't really have any really good answer to the Sting Scourger.
Now let's pretend that instead of that being a Emrakul, it was a Gristlebrand. So the show and tell would happen, Gristlebrand would come into play, and Max Tietze would do the exact same play. He would put the Matron into play, and he would search up the Sting Scourger. Now you'd think that the Gristlebrand would be able to protect everything by drawing enough cards and that the Forcible would be able to be used, but Cavern of Souls just doesn't care.
Yeah.
Cavern of Souls is like, you know what? This Sting Scourger is gonna happen. Or Aether Vial for that matter. Just doesn't care.
Yeah, I think the card that would be the biggest problem for Max there, if Omniscience came down.
There's the real kicker.
Yeah, and he had another Emrakul, he would actually be able to cast Emrakul, get the Time Walk effect from the Enter the Battlefield trigger, and then actually just basically wipe out everything in play. Okay, so Marshall's going to be on the play here. His deck is going to be a little bit... I mean, Max didn't really have a fast start. So from the sideboard, I'm pretty sure we're going to see a Pyroclasm from Marshall. I don't think we're going to see the Massacre. There's not enough planes in that deck to really cast Massacre. Do you think there's anything else he might go for?
I know that the primary card, Pyroclasm, is going to be a huge deal. But you know what? Pithing Needle is a not unreasonable card to shut off things like the Aether Vial. I can't remember. Does Pithing Needle shut off Rishadan Port? I think it says non-land, doesn't it?
Yeah, I think it says non-land, or it could be non-mana.
I just need to check. I can't remember if it's non-mana or non-land.
No, actually, no. You can definitely. It's definitely non-mana.
Yes. Yeah. So you could use that as a means to stop the port from doing some work. Now, I would only probably bring in that needle if I felt I had enough other cards that were not very good. And I don't know that that's the case, honestly. I think that this deck is so tight that going that narrow to go for a needle might be a little ambitious. And so you might just go with the simple stuff. Pyroclasm is there as a Burning Wish tutor, but the question is, will you have time to Burning Wish for Pyroclasm? Any sideboard card that's a Burning Wish target, if you don't think you have time to do it, it's better to board it in than it is to leave it in your sideboard.
That's right. So, and he really has Overmaster in his main deck. Not really, obviously, there's no counters coming from Max's deck to really think he needs Overmaster. So probably I would make the change where putting Pyroclasm into the main and taking out Overmaster. From Max's perspective, he's going to bring in the 3 Angels of Despair that we've been talking about. He's probably going to bring in, he's definitely going to bring in the Red Elemental Blasts. And I don't think he brings in the Croson Grip. I don't think it... the amount of mana he needs open for it to work. Omniscience does a lot of its impact basically the turn it comes into play.
Yeah, I mean, I could see an argument on Marshall McClaren's side that he's not going to actually win off of a grape shot combo where he doesn't necessarily need to. And I could see him sideboarding in the grape shot so that he can go turn 2, have that random shot to kill a lackey.
Certainly on the play, that seems like a reasonable thing. Looks like Marshall is he's keeping because he's kind of staring into the soul of Max,
and Max is not looking back.
Doesn't look like Max is super happy with his hand. Max's deck is also one that actually like mulligans pretty well. So I think if he doesn't feel he has if he has a slow start, or if it just doesn't have the tools to kind of win into a turn 2 or 3 show and tell, he may just ship it. He's gonna mulligan.
For those of you who are just joining us, I'm Adrian Sullivan here in the booth with Ben Seck. You can see Max Tietze here on the on the right. Max has had, I believe, 2 Grand Prix finishes in the last year. Worth noting, those 2 top 8s. Marshall McClaren here, 1 Star City Games top 8. Max Tietze is the, I believe, first Star City Games Invitational winner of 2012, winning in, I want to say Baltimore, in March.
The champions this year have been Max Tietze, then Lauren Nolan, and now Todd Anderson.
Very, very good. Now, if you watched the interview with Todd Anderson, you could really get a sense of the kind of energy he brings to the game.
No, for sure. He's a very active player on the circuit. Has done well at a Grand Prix level 2. I think he's come second.
If you have been following the Twitter feed with #SCGINVI, you could see a really amazing tweet from Wesley Wise. Wes was telling everybody there at the #SCGINVI this tweet: I just bought cards from a guy who flew from Russia just to play in our event. That is so awesome to me. Me too. That's awesome. I know that there were people that had flown here from Italy this weekend as well, but that is really cool. A shout out to all of our international players who have arrived for this event. And also, we know that we were being watched in many countries across the world. A shout out to all of you out there. If you are watching from a foreign country, just give us a little shout out too on #SCGINVI. Let us know. We'd love to hear about it. And heck, next time, Los Angeles, that is a pretty international airport. Come on down.
Yeah, and maybe in the future we might be able to actually bring the Star City Games Open across the seas.
Oh, we can dream big. We see a volcanic island. Wasteland takes that out. Is there a stifle? No, not in the deck. Just a brainstorm at the end of the turn.
It's not too bad if there's no pressure. The Wasteland doesn't really, it obviously sets Marshall back, but it also sets Max back the same amount.
Now, AJ Soccer a while back did a feature on Brainstorm and how to properly do it. And one of the things about a brainstorm like Marshall is doing here, this is not an ideal use of a brainstorm, but there are many times where you do non-ideal uses of your spell. Just because there's only so much time, you've got to make sure you do what needs to be done before it's too late. So here he gets back one of the cards he brainstormed back, so only one is hidden. He'll only be able to shuffle 1 away on this turn, but you know what? He might not have had a chance to profitably cast it otherwise.
So Max casts a Lackey?
Lackey versus a Misty Rainforest. And that one card that Marshall put back is shuffled away by that Misty Rainforest,
yep.
And Marshall drops to 19. He finds a volcanic island.
Yeah, so he's obviously either making a gamble that he doesn't mind getting wastelanded, or he just needs both red and blue.
And let's see, does he have a turn 2? Oh, there's the 3 mana he needs.
Looks like 3 mana. We'll see if it's a if he's going to be using all of that mana. It's a show and tell. That's his version of a lackey.
To see what they're gonna do, what do we got? It's Omniscience, and that's gonna probably be a bad news bears for Max Tietze.
Yeah, so now Marshall is gonna get Petal's Insight. Basically go through his deck any amount of times.
I'm going to direct, as we watch Omniscience go get Petals of Insight and Marshall McClarnon go through the motions to kill Max, our watcher, Leonid Zertsev, I'm sorry if I'm saying your name wrong, watching from Russia, who's curious about the name of the guy from Russia that flew here, why don't you ask Wesley David Wise? You can see him in the SCGINVI post. Just ask him a question, find out what he says. Maybe he'll be able to tell you. We're going on to a quick game 3.
Yeah, that was a turn 2 kill for Marshall. Just like had it all, basically. Show and tells into Omniscience. Basically now plays the Burning Wish for free, getting Petal's Insight, going through his deck some amount of times until he basically reaches a critical storm count where he gets another Burning Wish to fetch the Grape Shot that's in the sideboard.
Quick shout outs to various international watchers. Kaven, Alexander, Leonid, Aaron, Dan, Christopher, Vasilis. Hello to Greece, to Norway, to Denmark. Canada not so far, but it's still technically in another country.
I'd like
not
to give
overseas, but that's a good fine enough.
I'd like to give a shout out to my home country of Australia. I hope if there's any Australian viewers here, you'll post in the hashtag SCGINVI.
Wait, you're from Australia? I thought you were from California.
Well, I have lived in California for the last 8 years, but I cut my teeth playing Magic in the wild, tournaments of Sydney.
I forget, when you and I first met, were you living in Australia at
I
the time?
I was.
Cool beans. I think I might have been living in New York at that time, but maybe I was living in Madison.
No, you're in Madison because I remember coming in to playtest for Worlds.
That's right. We actually had that year people fly in from all over the place. The Steve OMS, Dan OMS, Neil Reeves, Dave Williams. I want to say John came up too for that playtest session in Madison, Wisconsin before Worlds in Toronto that year. Madison, Wisconsin, one of my favorite places. It's why I live there.
Yeah, and a hotbed of activities. Like Madison has definitely grown a few Pro Tour champions.
That's true. Small town. At least 2 Pro Tour champions and many Pro Tour top 8s.
That's right. So it has Bob Maher and McClarnon.
Yeah, McClarnon currently living in, I like to call the lost island of Curacao, where Pro Tour champions and their like go to disappear forever.
They're in temporary retirement. There's been a lot more players from Curacao actually coming to the Pro Tour. Jelge Wiegersma has made a top 8 from there. He also led the Dutch team at the World Cup.
It's funny that you bring up Helge Wiegersma. Helge Wiegersma is the de facto head of Dimir right now. He is the highest rated Dimir planeswalker.
How many points?
47,000 planeswalker points.
Okay, so if you actually, without any multipliers, if you had to get to 47,000 points, you'd have to win approximately 15,000 matches to get to that point.
That's without multipliers.
That's without multipliers. Luckily for Jelge, Pro Tours count for many more, and so do GPs.
Now, if you're watching in Europe, most of Europe right now, it's after midnight. So stay up late, watch some Magic.
I know there's a very healthy legacy, legacy
scene?
Community. Yeah, community.
Yeah,
that's
scene,
the word.
There we go. Yeah, Legacy in Europe actually I think is the real driving force for the early days of competitive Legacy. And I think right now Star City Games, having so many Legacy events, has taken over the driving of the format, but it really owes all of that to the European Magic community really showing us how to play Legacy many years ago.
Yeah, absolutely. With some of the early tournaments, GPs that basically reached over 1,000 were Legacy. Legacy is very, very huge. I mean, they had over 1,200 players, I think, at the last one in, I believe it was in maybe Spain or Portugal.
If you're just joining us, I'm Adrian Sullivan here in the booth with the one, the only, the Ben Sec. We're waiting for both of these players to shuffle up. I do believe that the amount of time that they've been spending shuffling exceeds the 3-minute present mark. Now, I don't know about you, but when I play in tournaments, maybe this is silly of me, but I noticed ever since note-taking was allowed and then note consulting was allowed, a lot of people started taking longer time sideboarding, and I started making it my habit to push a little button on my phone to time it, because you know what? It can really matter. It can really matter on that clock when you spend 4 minutes or 5 minutes between each game.
No, absolutely. I think Marshall's actually mulliganing, so that's why it's taking a little longer than usual.
That's fair. You get some time to mulligan. One thing to always remember, if you are playing in a tournament somewhere and you think that your opponent is taking too long, there's nothing wrong with asking a judge about it. Nothing wrong with saying, hey, I just want my opponent to not be taking too long. Them's the rules. Slow play is not a part of Magic that we want to propagate.
Marshall gets 6 cards. Let's see if he is happier with those 6. It looks like he's shaking his head a little bit. Oh, he's keeping. Max on the play. Max with the Cavern of Souls.
Is it going to be a lackey? A vial.
I presume the Cavern is naming Goblin. Okay. Marshall with a Scalding Tarn. Declines to actually sack it yet. So apparently the player that came from Russia actually won an IQ there.
That's awesome.
I think there's been a slow rollout of invitational qualifiers kind of throughout the world, basically. So we're probably going to see more and more international players.
Yeah, go ahead.
If you're interested in probably running an IQ and you're not from America, you should probably contact the Star City Games team, and they'll probably work out a way for you to have one of those.
I would say more than probably.
Okay. So Marshall basically Max forced Marshall to sack his Scalding Tarn to fetch a volcanic island. He basically left it unsacked just to make sure that he couldn't get ported or wastelanded. He plays a Brainstorm.
Now, if you are curious about getting Star City Games invitational qualifiers at your store, and this includes everyone over there overseas, if you're in Europe, if you're in Asia, if you're in Australia, what you need to do is you need to go to starcitygames.com/IQ, and potentially the other place to go is to email SCGIQ@starcitygames.com.
Okay.
Turn 2, another volcanic.
He's pondering.
Fishy ponder.
Okay, didn't like those 3. Basically, insta shuffled. Obviously looking for something. Obviously looking for a specific thing. But having the second land means he almost definitely can cast Show and Tell next turn if he does not get Rashad and Porter.
One of the awesome things about winning an invitational qualifier is you get a $250 prize to help support your travel to the event. Now, obviously, that will not cover it from Europe, from Australia, from Asia, but it certainly helps. And when you're talking about one of the highest expected value tournaments in the world, these invitationals have a huge amount of money given out. I think that only the player championship gives out more from an expected value.
Yeah, it's almost $250 per player given out.
We see a Rishadan port after the Wasteland to tap down Marshall's land. He's back down to only 0 mana during his main phase. Of course, laying a land could change that.
Max still hasn't played a threat yet, but he does have the vial ticked up to 2, which indicates that he can probably start putting out things like pile drivers. Okay, Marshall lays an island. Up to 3. 3 is really the magic number for Goblins. It has Matron, which can search for anything else. Obviously has some things like a War Chief.
War Chief in many ways is just such a crazy card in Goblins. It actually can create kills out of nowhere because that reduction in the cost of the mana. I've seen games where the player was at 19, no threats in play. The opponent goes end of turn, put down a War Chief. My turn, put down a War Chief. Cast a Matron for 1. Find a Matron. Cast another Matron for 1. Find a Matron. Cast a Matron for 1. Find a Matron. Get a pile driver. Kill you.
Yeah, especially with Skirk Prospector, when you have 2 War Chiefs and the Skirk Prospector out, your Matrons are basically free tutors.
Yeah, like, Goblins is a crazy deck, and the things that have been holding it back, well, it started to have problems with the big, huge creatures that were coming out of decks like Rug Delver. But Cavern of Souls has helped it fight back because it's able to get through some of its critical cards past a Force of Will.
Yeah, I think the turn 1 Lackey with a Cavern really, really makes a big difference here. Max using the 3-cost Aether Vial to get out a Matron. Searching for, my guess is probably a War Chief or something else like that. A pile driver. Seems to indicate to me that he might have a War Chief in hand, and next turn he may like vial out the War Chief. Okay, Max is releasing Marshall from the port lock. Let's see if Marshall's going to make the most. Oh, this doesn't look as promising using one of those mana. Maybe he has a 2-mana land like City of Traders or Ancient Tomb.
It could well be. A Lotus Petal in the land would also do it. Now, for Max to release Marshall, I wonder if he has an Angel in his hand.
Oh wow, that could definitely be true.
Another quick shout out to more players from afar. Leandro from Brazil, Lorenzo from Italy, and many other players as well. We have an Ancient Tomb from Marshall. Here we got I think the showdown.
Okay, I think I'm thinking you're right. I think there's an Angel? Angel Despair.
Boom!
Oh.
What instance do you got there, Marshall? You got any? Any instance?
Wow. Doesn't have anything. Now has an Angel. This is pretty incredibly devastating for Max.
Oh,
for Marshall.
Max. Okay, you are a master. Wow, that's exciting. That
really, the only
so
matchup.
exciting.
Oh, the only matchup that this like he has these 3 sideboard slots dedicated to dealing with the show and tell matchup.
That is probably the second most exciting show and tell I've seen resolve. The first was watching, I want to say, Gerard Fabiano and Jacob Van Lunen when a show and tell came down and the other player put down Battle of Wits and won on the upkeep. That was on the camera.
Oh.
Yeah, I didn't say it. It was Kenny Castor that did that play. That's awesome. 4-mana Ringleader. Is that going to be a whiff? Oh, Ringleader.
Well,
Angel's pretty good at least. We're going to have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 11 damage coming on in. Angel and 3 goblins.
Yeah. I think Marshall actually has a Forcible in hand because, like, when the Angel appeared, he really seemed to, like...
want to stop it?
Yeah, he thumbed his hand looking... Oh, hold on. It's show and tell. I can't Forcible that. Okay. Marshall might have a do-over.
and now Max Tietze having put an angel in the bottom of his library. If Marshall has another show and tell and something useful to do, the game is still on.
Yes.
Unless Max has a second angel.
This is the last turn. So the port, he's going to port the Ancient Tomb. Porting Ancient Tomb does not cause any damage, just because you only lose 2 life if you... Nope.
That is it. Oh, what? That was an angel that just... Oh, wow, that was so good. So good. Thank you, Max Tietze, for showing us something totally awesome.